MV3 Traders Futures Trade Radio is brought to you by The Ultimate Trader's Guide, your one-stop shop for the most valuable income-producing information on the internet. Go to ultimatetradersguide.net to learn more. Link in the description below. I had to make sure I started this a couple minutes early to make sure all of my, because I didn't do my pre-check. I forgot to make sure my OBS was set up. Everything coming through good. Alright. I saw some sell-off overnight, some selling overnight. Starting to see a little bit of retracement pre-RTH. Taking out a couple of the previous supply areas, previous supply zones. Hanging out in this range right before the open of 340 and 320. Let's start the countdown. And we are open. All right, continuing to lift the supply into the open. Gives me a rotation long. I took us strongly above the VWAP. Let's see if we get a retest of the VWAP. Kind of seeing a front run of that retest. I actually should have been long there. It happened really quick. I wasn't 100% ready. I got to figure out how to get right on these FTR dates. It is tough to live stream and trade at the same time. So on the regular days, I'm good because I did have an issue where I wasn't getting up early enough with all the because I've set up. So normally I've been going through this process of refining things. A little choppy today. And my PC's lagging a little bit. Yeah, that's a nice little inventory area, 360, right there at VWAP. Supply is currently right above 370. Finish that thought I started earlier later. It did put me inside of a trade. sure I focus on this position. And there's a break of supply. We got MSRP right above 380. Got a front run of that. And that took me out, that front run took me out pretty much break even. Pretty decent. So what was I saying? Oh yeah, my timing. So before, the time that I was getting up, it was fine. Like I had plenty, I was getting up in enough of time to do all of my pre-market stuff and still, you know, make sure I did all my breathing work and all that stuff, and I was in the right mindset for my trading session. But you know, since I've kind of added a couple things to the process to make sure that I'm reminding myself of everything that I'm supposed to be doing and all that stuff. I updated my pre-market checklist and my reminders, my trading SOP. So a couple more steps, and then what I'm also doing with social media. So I've added a couple more steps to my pre-market stuff. So that required me to get up earlier. So I had to adjust the time of me getting up, so I wouldn't be messing myself up during my trading session, because I rushed into my trading session. So I think that's the whole point of what I'm trying to say, is trying to, and especially on these FTR days, trying to rush into a trading session can set you up for a lot of failure, which is kind of interesting how that came to me with the trader triggers that we have today. That was actually kind of it's related to the topic. Really choppy. We're lifting the supply. It break the range, came back into the range, go back to that last little episode of that. Slightly lifted the inventory, but came back to inventory. And now we got some quick inventory off of 380 that was serving as supply. There's a retest of that area. The way that printed historically, I would have liked for it to hold it, but we can still, you know, we're not out of that inventory zone yet. Getting a mechanical response off of automation. Got some negotiating going around near automation. That's seasoning our inventory. Interesting mechanical supply response off my PR-2 area. We got a brief volume gap around 400. Also, if we continue to drop the inventory, we got a volume gap around 360, showing us we haven't spent that much time around VWAP. We haven't conducted that much business around VWAP. They've just been doing some touch and go. $350 would be a key area for me to look for a rotation. Right now, wholesale seems to be grabbing points and inventory off of the VWAP. There's a touch at 350. Got some negotiating going on. Picked up some inventory off of 350. Trading extremely mechanical. And for sure, that trade I took earlier was a one and done for me. I trade light on FTR days. I made that decision last week. So right now, we're kind of holding up this inventory in this area, kind of setting up shop here around the VWAP. There we go, we dropping the inventory.
Yeah.
So we have some historical inventory below us, you know, to kind of quote unquote fight through. But it would be reasonable by the way that I'm reading it. This is, again, not trading advice or anything like that. But it'll be reasonable to spend some time, you know, finding lower prices or maybe even ranging out here. Got some MSRP right below 340. That gave us a mechanical supply response. I'll go up and tap that 340 area again. Taking a moment to negotiate. It's kind of slow. Let's see if we set up shop here. Or are we just gonna budget and keep it moving? Some quick budgeting. Now we're dropping the inventory one more time. Taking us back into that shop. Let's see, that potentially served as a slingshot to take us back to lift supply. We front ran that previous supply, so looks like we're still, spending some time budgeting. But we're still mechanical, nice mechanical response off of the MSRP, automation. Now we're back inside of automation. And MSRP is at 340. That previous supply area. We're looking to see if we lift that supply is still, let's see. Let's say about 336 to 340. So in this little micro range here, we are slowly lifting the supply, and there is the push. We finally push with some momentum past that 340 supply zone. Took us to another rotation point. Back above VWAP. Needed to wholesale, looks like they needed to grab some points off of VWAP to serve their customer. Just wanted to beat the VWAP, that's still if we're from a long bias. Let's fill as much of our clients' position below VWAP as we can, and then take it back above VWAP. And along the way, we're going to start. Sometimes our customers, wholesalers ourselves also. And then as we go back towards VWAP to get points and to quote unquote beat the VWAP, we're going to dump some of that inventory and pay ourselves. That VWAP is also a great place to trigger some new participation that will serve as liquidity to pay ourselves from all of that inventory that we collected below. In this instance, in that 340 to 320 area. It took us almost to 310. Now let's say the cycle starts over again. Haven't really found a supply zone as of yet. This could be serving one right here at 330, or an inventory zone. Starting to not be as mechanical as we once were. I mean, there are somewhat mechanical responses, but they're quick. Now we found supply at 350. It's also key to remind ourselves that the prices that I'm looking at are not points, they're ranges. And like I say, like I'm not really, this is not trading advice or anything like that. The way that I'm narrating this is the same way that I would read it if I'm trading by myself. This is the things that I would say out loud to myself when I'm trading by myself, just to make sure I'm maintaining the awareness to what's important for my strategy and how I like to execute and how I like to show up in this environment. And understanding, I like to talk about this wholesale concept in the way that I read it a lot, because it really helped clear up the picture for me. So that was a nice inventory lift off that 340 to 330 zone. Got a quick inventory response at 350. Still lifting the supply. Jumped on the elevator. Got about 10 minutes before our V period. Back to that 350 inventory. Conducting some more business around VWAP. Quick inventory response off of that zone. Tell execution wise, I'm not 100% locked in. Well, I guess because I already decided not to have a one and done day. But as I go along, I like to mark off areas of interest. I don't think you'll be able to see that. But all I'm doing is marking off where I'm reading inventory and supply. Taking a brief moment to negotiate here around 380. There was some bid and offer action going on up there, so I'm not gonna really label any inventory up there. So I'm still looking at inventory around 360, even though we are picking up, getting inventory response along the way, heading back to 360. But it's not enough of a response for me to give it any significance as of yet. So we're back at 360. Supply is at roughly 385. Looks like we're back into automation. Or maybe we're below automation. It's a lot of noise in this area from an indicator perspective. Dropping the inventory once again. I wouldn't be surprised if we stay range bound for a while. I zoom out and look at a 3-minute perspective. We got a nice mechanical range between my PR -2 and PR -5. for RTH. Drop that inventory to 340. The way that is printed here is sort of a flag. It could be another rotation point. Depends on our inventory interest below 340. Starting to pick up some of that cheaper inventory below 340, but briefly. This is also an inventory zone a few minutes ago. So just picking up some more inventory down here around 340. Didn't really take us back to supply of yet. We're still picking up more inventory. A whole lot happening in this area. We just collecting inventory. A little bit of negotiating. All right, so now let's take that inventory back up to supply. Another supply response off of automation. Automation is giving us the mechanics right now. It was a slight supply lift if you zoom in and look at it from a micro scale. For my 1 minute triggers, I'm looking at below 340 from the triggers that I post inside of the Discord channel and the Hindsight Capital channel of the Discord. So we can break below 340 and hold. It'll be interesting to see if we can, how far, what it'll take us. It kind of dipped below the actual trigger point, but it was quick. Still doing a little bit of business around our supply zone. Back down to inventory. That was a slight inventory lift. So like 345-ish. Still got buyer interest in this inventory area. But all this buy interest down here should create some liquidity if we can break this inventory zone, or we can drop this inventory, give us some guaranteed cheaper inventory if wholesale wants to take advantage of it. We are back below 340. Still getting the inventory response. And there we go. Now we're going to take advantage of that cheaper inventory. As our B force comes in, giving us a strong B force response. Well, strong is kind of mild right now. I would rate this as mild, but it's not super strong. But we're still ongoing. See how it's a nice little setup to run some stops. And they were in your face about it too. They wasn't really that tricky. You clearly see how they were, getting buy participation in that inventory zone, but not really taking it anywhere. Not really taking the inventory that they collected there anywhere. So the longer we spend, the more time we spend inside of these shops, the more we increase the likelihood of a squeeze. But nothing is guaranteed in this environment. And on that note, it's time for some halftime. We're gonna take a quick break for halftime, and we'll be right back for another episode of Trader Triggers. See you on the other side. MV3 Traders Futures Trade Radio is brought to you by the Ultimate Trader's Guide, your one-stop shop for the most valuable income-producing information on the internet. Go to ultimatetradersguide.net to learn more. Link in the description below. Alright, welcome back to the second half of Futures Trade Radio for another episode of Trader Triggers. Now, recently I talked about how day trading, or trading in general, is really about solving problems. So let's talk about one of the common problems that we all face as traders: making mistakes, and why I think you should stop being so worried about making mistakes and actually embrace them. So I get it, right? Struggling and going through hard times is not easy. It's reasonable to have a fear of making mistakes. Fear of making mistakes is one of the main hurdles that I had to overcome since the first time I experienced a losing streak. But here's the thing, most fears are irrational, especially fears around making mistakes. We're usually warned about mistakes as something to avoid at all costs, like giving how-tos for how to not make the same mistakes as someone else did. But the thing about these mistakes, the person that's trying to keep you away from making those mistakes wouldn't even have the lessons they're passing on to you had it not been for them experiencing what they've experienced or what they perceive to be a vital mistake. Now, that perceived part of that last sentence is key, because much like the process that we go through in school, a lot of the things we may look at as mistakes are like tests that we must pass to reach the next stage of our life. It's the mirror showing us something that we can improve on. So where do we get these ideas to avoid making mistakes? Somewhere along the journey of our life, we may have an experience or receive some information that creates possibilities in our heads that we don't want to experience firsthand. Many times, the situations we are trying to avoid is something that we witness vicariously from another person that is close to us, like, for example, watching our friend or maybe a family member get their heart broken from a relationship that they were committed to. Or maybe the fear came from observing a distant event, like on a TV or a movie, or maybe like on YouTube or something, such as watching someone get into a gunfight with an opposing force. Yet in your reality, you live in a safe environment where most people, get along with each other. And if they do have conflict, it's usually just a verbal type of situation, and it's short-lived. But having this kind of mentality, allowing yourself to get into this, pick up the energy of that and get into this mentality, you can end up setting up excessive mechanisms like carrying a gun around with you wherever you go, when a majority of your travels is spent in areas where the last thing that people want to do is get into a lethal confrontation. Now, that may sound like a far-fetched scenario, but stuff like this happens more than you know. Hashtag face mask. If you're not careful with stuff like this and put these irrational thoughts in check as soon as possible, your thoughts could lead you to taking actions where you end up putting yourself in the very predicament you're trying to avoid. So when you're faced with a mistake, you'll want to acknowledge the mistake you're trying to avoid and attempt to see the positive side of whatever that mistake is. Give a majority of your attention to the activities that are going to help you reach the goals you're aiming to achieve. Right? So like if you're trying to trade consistently and make as few mistakes as possible, or if you're trying to trade consistently and every time you see your setup, well, what you want to focus on, instead of focusing on when the setup doesn't work, give most of your attention to when the setup does work. And when you're do your manual back testing and you're looking at charts from history, if you're looking at charts from the past, then look for the setups where it works. Give most of your attention to looking for the setup where it works instead of looking where the setup can fail. Now, of course, this is easier said than done. The thoughts that have found residence inside of your head can be loud and pesky. Every time you approach a situation that could lead you to the mistake you're trying to avoid, here comes that voice or those ideals telling you to stop and run. So in these moments and before these moments, you want to maintain a positive attitude about mistakes. To keep a healthy relationship with making mistakes, you should understand that mistakes are part of every process towards success. In fact, attempting to avoid mistakes, especially with trading, can be more costly than making the mistake. For example, putting too much energy into avoiding a bad setup can lead you to becoming trigger shy, which will lead you to missing out on the setups you're supposed to be taking. This means you're missing what should be your winners. It's key to understand here, not every trade is going to set up perfectly like the ones you've seen before and studied during your backtesting sessions. Many setups come imperfectly, even the quote-unquote A+ setups. And what I found to be the best method for knowing how good a setup is simply by actually taking setups that didn't work. I've even seen what looked to be a bad setup in the moment give me a trigger that I passed on because it wasn't perfect, right? Or it appeared in the moment to be similar to a previous loss. Now, I may have read it in that way in that moment, but what followed is that trigger ending up being what should have been a huge winner for me. So with that, you'll want to you want to take note here that mistakes always carries valuable lessons that you can use to grow and become a much better trader in the long run. Having a positive attitude towards mistakes will allow you to catch those lessons quickly, helping you to make any necessary pivots as quickly as possible. This also has a side effect of helping you remove counterproductive emotions you have around trading. One way to remove emotions around making mistakes and around, let's say, the negative side of trading is to actually go through those things and realize once you go through it that it wasn't as bad as you was making it out to be in your head. Right? The picture will start to become clearer because these mistakes teaches you things about yourself and the market, effectively removing any unknowns. You experienced this event and you had now you have firsthand knowledge of how bad things can get, which will help you develop methodologies to mitigate how bad it can get for you. So now when the situation returns, you're fully prepared. Which leads us to our final note on this topic. You'll want to develop a plan to help you mitigate making mistakes. So at this point, we know mistakes can be valuable to our growth, but what may not be as valuable is making the same mistake over and over again. This is the purpose of having a plan to mitigate your mistakes. Keeping in mind, our plan is not aiming to avoid mistakes altogether, because remember, we gain valuable lessons through the mistakes that we go through. But once we gain the value from the mistake, we can take note of the lesson in our journals, and then we can take those lessons and everything we gained from journaling and update our standard operating procedures, or SOPs, for trading that I mentioned 2 episodes ago. That will help us to not unnecessarily make the same mistake more than once. it's not the end of the world, right? If you do make the same mistake again, but your plan or SOP can help you decrease the amount of times you repeat the same mistake. So I can remember as a new trader, I would repeat the same mistakes until I started using my checklist, which changed the complete game for me, which completely changed the game for me. The way you can go about this is using your journal to write out everything about the mistake in as much detail as you can think of. Then list out what you learned from the mistake so that you don't do it again. This part could take some time to do research and some deep thought on the situation and how it relates to the bigger picture, because you won't always, because you also don't want to go overboard with catching mistakes, making key changes to false positives. One of the things I do when I initially see something as a mistake that I made is I go back hours after the fact, after the emotional dust has settled, and reassess if it was actually me or the market. You want to be careful here and make sure you're not seeing a market anomaly as a mistake that you made. That could set you in a detrimental loop of fixing a problem that really does not exist. Got to remind yourself that this environment is not perfect. Remember, events in this imperfect environment, or random events in this imperfect environment, is completely normal. So it may also require some backtesting, some manual backtesting that is, to make sure that this wasn't just a random market generated event that got the best of you. Again, absolutely normal, but that's why risk management is so important for us retail traders. But after you separated yourself from the situation in real time and did a full assessment of the perceived mistake, if you conclude this event was a real mistake that you made, then you can proceed with coming up with solutions that you can implement inside of your SOP so you mitigate the chances of you repeating that mistake multiple times. Now, the lessons that you learn from your mistakes are going to be helpful to others, right? To other traders. But when you share those lessons, the message shouldn't be to not make mistakes. This is what tends to happen when we make it to the other side of a mistake. We share our story with other people about the horrible mistake that we made, and at the end up sending the message that mistakes are bad and should be avoided at all costs. But remember, you only know better because you made the mistake and you made it through the mistake. So your experience should be a testimony of the lesson you learned from the mistake and how you were made better by going through the mistake, how you were made better from the mistake. In my opinion, that is the message, or that message is going to be much more valuable to who you're trying to help versus telling someone else to not make the mistake. You may stop them from making the same mistake that you made, but eventually they're going to face a situation that's going to lead to them making a mistake of their own. It's an inevitable part of the human experience. Being able to reference your story of how you made it through your mistakes will help them navigate their own or through their own mistakes. And from there, we all evolve. So, on that note, I appreciate each and every one of you for tuning in to another classic episode of Trader Triggers. As always, if you found this valuable, tap that like button. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And if you're listening to this off YouTube on a normal podcast platform, remember to leave a 5-star review or a 5-star rating. And for bonus points, go ahead and leave a review for me. And until next time, trade it easy.